What I'm about to share with you may surprise you, even shock you. If you've landed here, it's not by chance. You're here because something in your life is shifting in a major way. You're moving from being dismissed to being undeniable. The very things they said you couldn't do, the things even the police labeled impossible, are the exact things you're now making happen. This isn't just about proving people wrong. It's about stepping fully into your own power. You've been overlooked, underestimated, written off, and yet here you are, breaking barriers they never thought you could. The police panicked, not because you broke the law, but because you broke the mold. You didn't lash out. You didn't seek revenge. You simply did the unthinkable. You stopped explaining yourself, stopped showing up for systems and people that never showed up for you. That silence, it hit harder than any words ever could. Now, before we dive deeper, take a moment to hit that like button. Subscribe to help us reach 5,000 subscribers, and leave a comment below. Your support helps this message reach more people who need to hear it. The very ones who doubted you are left scrambling to understand how you did it. But you already know, it was never about proving anything to them. It was about finally choosing yourself. You made a choice that echoed farther than any shout, a choice so bold it startled those you expected to protect you. In your silence, you reclaimed a strength they couldn't ignore. It was a quiet revolution whose ripples reached even into halls meant for safety. You didn't just vanish. You transformed into someone they couldn't categorize, someone whose dignity commanded their attention. Picture the scene, you stepping away from chaos, not with anger, but with composed determination. The people who'd once stood over you in judgment felt a tremor in their facade. That pause they felt wasn't fear, it was respect, awakened in the face of your silent affirmation of your own value. You weren't reactive. You were deliberate. In your calm and calculated choice to step back, you disrupted the script. You rewrote the narrative without raising your voice, and that cut deeper than any confrontation could have. This was never about them. It was about the first glimmer of the power that grows when you stop feeding the noise and start honoring your inner worth. And when the protectors finally looked at you, eyes cleared of their expectations, you saw, in that moment, how formidable silence can really be. They laughed, doubted, wrote you off with careless confidence. "You'll never leave," they said, with the faintest sneer. But you weren't built for their doubts. You were built for quiet resilience, the kind that gathers, strengthens, and one day rises without a warning. There was no dramatic exit, no tears or tantrums. You didn't announce your firings or objections. You simply put one foot in front of the other, slowly, steadily, until you weren't there anymore. That simplicity is powerful. You let your absence do the talking. Their words haunted empty spaces more than any outburst ever could. As each step took you farther from their expectations, their certainty unraveled. You walked out of their story and into your own. Now, they're left staring at that absence, wondering how someone they dismissed could become something beyond their comprehension. That's not just walking away. That's walking into the kind of freedom they couldn't even imagine. Quiet has a jagged edge when wielded with purpose. You learned that. You used stillness to expose cracks in a system built on assumptions, one that counted you as silent, broken, invisible, without ever understanding your heart. The system, people, policies, promises, thrived on your compliance, but your withdrawal was seismic. With each unsaid word, each unmet expectation, you unraveled the order they depended on. Now, their corridors of control echo with the emptiness of your unspoken rebellion. Colleagues find their directives unanswered. The system hiccups, missing the commotion. It fails without your compliance. Your silence didn't just make a point. It haunted their routine. It was a reminder that power doesn't always roar. It can be a steady, invisible force that shifts everything from the inside. And though they didn't hear a sound, they felt the quake. Nobody saw you coming. Not your detractors, not your allies. You were an afterthought until you weren't. You used the weight of being underestimated as fuel. Every dismissal cemented your resolve. Every invisible moment was a stepping stone. You weren't chasing approval. You were building momentum. Then came the breakthrough. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was a moment when people finally noticed you wouldn't show up for less, not for less respect, less opportunity, less recognition. And suddenly, you were unstoppable. That shift, moving from dismissed to unstoppable, is the art of reclaiming your narrative without fanfare, through sheer inner force. You were the background that became a breakthrough. That's what real transformation looks like. When they needed someone to fall back on, you were there, the reliable option, the default, the easy yes in the room full of hard decisions. But they took that reliability for granted. Then one day, you changed. You redefined your terms. You said yes to yourself first. You walked out of the plan you didn't sign up for, with grace, with clarity, with conviction. You weren't a backup anymore. You were the boundary. You weren't just indispensable. You were in control of your exodus. That act of making yourself the exit, not just someone on standby, was bold, beautiful, and undeniable. Impossible was their shorthand for too much to handle, too intimidating, too inconvenient. It was their way of boxing you in. But you didn't just shrug it off. You wore it like armor. Every glance at your reflection was a reminder. Impossible is just a word. Your real label is self-respect, unapologetic and unwavering. By insisting on your dignity, you rewrote their limitations. You put the impossible back on the board, owned it, defied it, and made it your quiet anthem. You didn't need a megaphone. You needed conviction. That's what made impossible feel inevitable. You shifted, not with a siren, but a sigh. And that sigh, that unseen shift, it didn't go unnoticed. To them, it was quiet. But to the system, the organization, the people, there were alarm bells. Because you stopped being predictable. You traded their narrative for your own, And with that, familiarity turned to discomfort. They realized power had slipped from their fingers into your palms, and that made them uneasy. You might not have shouted, "I'm done," but you whispered to yourself, and that was enough to set off the alarms. You didn't send memos, you didn't drop hints or write resignation letters full of grievances. You closed the chapter. Snap, done. It wasn't dramatic, it was decisive. The sound of the door slamming wasn't about anger. It was about finality. And in that finality, there was dignity. They didn't see it coming. But when it happened, they felt it like a jolt, a reminder that boundaries are invisible until they're enforced. You didn't need fanfare. You needed closure. You gave it to yourself. They banked on your breaking point, on the edge, on the fracture. But what they didn't count on was your capacity to build. You didn't just survive. You constructed something new in the ashes. You rebuilt yourself with quieter bricks, resilience, clarity, confidence, and self-compassion. You became the architect of your own life, not a victim of someone else's plan. They expected collapse. Instead, they witnessed creation. You didn't break. You became better. This wasn't falling apart. This was rising up. You didn't shatter. You shifted into a version of yourself that made you proud. Each quiet moment of pain wasn't a sign of fracture. It was a sign of forging. You were being tempered, sharpened, made into someone unstoppable. When you finally emerged, you weren't just surviving, you were thriving. And that's not breakdown. That's breakthrough. Your absence wasn't just noticed. It unnerved them. When you stopped participating in the narrative they'd scripted, the plot unraveled. They looked around and realized they didn't hold the pen anymore. You did. You reclaimed the story from someone else's script. And in that moment, they lost their grip. And maybe that's the point. When you step away, they despair. Not because they value you, but because they relied on you. And that reliance is power. You were referred to as one of many, a convenient choice, never the focal point. But you rewrote the pattern. You stopped settling for good enough. You insisted on top tier, self-care, self-respect, self-validation. Now, anything less sounds inadequate. You're no longer one pick among many. You're the bar. They underestimated the quiet power of your insistence, and now it's the standard. They treated you like a ghost before, ignoring your presence, your potential. But this wasn't just being ghosted. It was exiling yourself from a script you didn't want to star in. You're not lurking, you're gone. For good. No return address, no pause. Just a determined stride into your own story, one they can't even begin to follow. People thrive on predictability. When you shattered that, chaos followed. Their reaction? Panic, confusion, awkward searching. But that response wasn't about you. It was proof. Your power lies in the freedom they can't comprehend. You didn't need to announce your strength. It whispered loudly enough to elicit a reaction. And if panic is the echo, your power must be the source. They wanted you small, framed, confined by their understanding. Your silence blew that frame wide open. They thought you'd crumble. But when you didn't, When you turned stillness into force, they feared what you'd become, not the person you were, but the person you chose to be. There's a unique strength in silence, a force that often goes unnoticed, but moves mountains quietly. You were underestimated because you didn't yell, because you didn't throw tantrums or demand attention. But beneath that quiet exterior was a fire burning, fueled by years of pain, loyalty, and unacknowledged sacrifice. People mistook your calm for weakness, but they never saw the storm building inside you. This silent power is the kind that breaks chains without clanging, reshapes lives without headlines. It's the strength to endure heartbreak without losing yourself, to watch betrayal unfold and still hold your dignity intact. They counted on your silence to keep you tethered, but what they didn't realize was how fiercely you guarded your peace, and how much that peace was about to redefine everything. Your silence wasn't absence, it was preparation. While they were busy judging, you were strategizing your next move, turning pain into fuel and loyalty into lessons. That quiet resilience is what made you unstoppable, the kind that forces even the most dismissive to sit up and pay attention when it finally moves. History is full of those whose quiet strength changed the course of their story, and your silence fits in that legacy perfectly. It's not about being loud. It's about being strong enough to wait, to watch, and to rise on your own terms. So next time someone underestimates you, remember, it's often the silent ones who carry the heaviest storms and the greatest power. There comes a point when pleading for recognition feels like shouting into a void. You begged for respect, for understanding, for just a little bit of fairness, but your words fell on deaf ears. That moment, when you finally realized your voice was being ignored, wasn't a defeat. It was your awakening. Stopping the begging means reclaiming your power. It means you refuse to shrink for someone else's comfort. You refuse to exhaust yourself chasing someone else's approval. It's one of the most courageous things you can do, to say, I am enough, even if the world says otherwise. This wasn't just silence, it was a loud, unyielding boundary. You stopped pouring yourself into relationships, jobs, and systems that drained your soul and never gave back. You realized that respect isn't earned by shouting louder, but by standing firm, by holding your ground even when it's lonely. When you stopped begging, you started walking away from toxic dynamics that no longer served your growth. And in that refusal, you found clarity, self-worth, and the freedom to choose what truly deserves your time and energy. You didn't just silence your voice, you amplified your value. And that's a transformation no one could have predicted. No one sees the battles we fight in the quiet corners of our minds. They only witness the aftermath, the withdrawal, the change, the silent strength. But behind every calm exterior is a storm of doubts, fears, and unspoken struggles that test your spirit. You fought a war that no one understood, against invisibility, against pain that wasn't yours alone, but felt like it was your burden to carry, against expectations that crushed you beneath their weight. And through it all, you stayed, sometimes barely, but you stayed. That battle forged a resilience that's not loud or brash, but deep and unshakable. You learned to carry scars with grace and to stand tall even when your heart whispered for rest. The battle wasn't about defeating others. It was about conquering yourself, breaking free from the chains of doubt and despair. Every day you chose to show up, even when it hurt, and every day you reclaimed a little more of your power by refusing to be defined by your struggles. That internal war wasn't in vain. It shaped the extraordinary person you are today. Pain has a way of reshaping us, but it doesn't have to destroy us. You experienced wounds that cut deep, moments that felt unbearable, betrayals that left you breathless. Yet, you chose not to let those scars be your end, but your beginning. Transforming pain into purpose is one of the most profound acts of courage. It means facing the darkness head on and saying, "I will not let this break me." You turned every hardship into a stepping stone, every hurt into a lesson, every tear into resolve. You might not be realized it in the moment, but the pain sharpened your vision. It forced you to redefine what truly matters, to seek authenticity and alignment rather than approval. It gave you the strength to say no to what drains you and yes to what elevates you. Purpose became your compass. It gave your journey meaning beyond survival. And in that purpose, you found freedom, the freedom to be unapologetically you, no matter the cost. Your pain wasn't wasted. It was the soil where your future grew. Walking away is one of the most misunderstood acts of strength. Many see it as giving up, as failure, but it's actually the ultimate reclaiming of control. You walked away from what was toxic, from what was draining, from what diminished your spirit. That step requires immense bravery. It's a choice to prioritize your peace over others' expectations, your growth over the comfort of familiarity. You walked away not because you were weak, but because you were wise enough to know your worth. When you walked away, you left behind chains of resentment, cycles of pain, and patterns that no longer served your highest good. You didn't run. You rose. You didn't retreat. You advanced toward a better version of your life. This act sent a ripple through your world, shaking the foundations of relationships and systems that depended on your compliance. But more importantly, it rebuilt you into someone untouchable, someone who knows their value and refuses to settle for less. Walking away wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything you deserved. Loyalty is a powerful, often misunderstood virtue. You gave it willingly, faithfully, sometimes blindly. But instead of being seen as strength, your loyalty was mistaken for weakness, something to exploit, to manipulate, or to ignore. This betrayal is among the hardest to bear because it cuts through your sense of self. You believed in people, in promises, in causes. You stood firm, even when it was difficult, hoping your steadfastness would be met with respect and reciprocity. But loyalty is not submission. It's a testament to your character, your values, and your commitment. When others dismissed it, they revealed their own limitations, not yours. Your unwavering loyalty was a testament to your heart's strength. And when you finally stepped away, you did so with the